So first of all, thank you very much to everyone for coming. Thank you, Abes, for this invitation, and thank you, Abes. So tonight we're going to present you the visual art in the UAE. So the name is Tracing the Journey. So why did you choose this subject? So as many of you might have noticed, the UAE artistic and cultural landscape have been quite changing in the last decades, especially with the opening of the Louvre Abu Dhabi, but also with the development of the market in Dubaï. That goes with the opening of Christie's and also of the recent development in Circle Avenue. Yet, those two dynamics, so the opening of the Louvre Abu Dhabi, the development of Museum Island in Abu Dhabi, are usually described as either imported phenomena, meaning that there have been like dynamics that were carried out by foreign experts, or sometimes they are described as political tools, especially when talking about the museum in Saadiyat Island. So there has been a great coverage, media coverage, about those two dynamics again, yet they kind of always forget or kind of obscures the history of art in the UAE that we will try to present you tonight. So, history of art in the UAE. I will begin by the spark of an artist. So the United, can you hear? Okay.
No, yes, it needs to be
closer.
Yeah.
Yes, it is better. Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So the United Arab Emirates had been founded in 1971, as most of you might know, and was later joined 1 year after by Ras Al Khaimah. So at this time, the UAE, that was a developing country, did not have as many resources as the other countries in the Arabian Peninsula, already had, which is due to a late recovery of oil. So the first Emirati University opened in 1977. In the other countries, such as Bahrain, but also Kuwait, national university were already created. So to, let's say, try to remedy to this problem or to this lack of education, the government, the UAE government started sending students abroad, mainly to Cairo in Egypt, but also to Syria, to Iraq, and also to London or the USA. When the artists went to these different places, they started to get greatly influenced by many artistic and political movements. So most of them, I think you can change. Is it better now? Yes.
Just be louder yourself.
That would be the solution. So in 1979, there was a law called the Law of Forming Society that was passed in the UAE, which allowed if 15 people gather together to create an organization. At the same time, in the Emirate of Sharjah, there was what was later to be called the Revolution of Culture, that was led by the ruler Sultan Mohammed Al-Qasimi. So, in the light of those two developments, the law of forming society and the beginning of the revolution of culture, many artists that were or students that were studying abroad started to come back to the UAE to form the first organization, art organization of the UAE, which was called the Emirati-French Society. So the mission of the Emirati-French Society, I put it here so I won't read it out loud, but was pretty much to gather all the visual artists and also to promote contemporary art in a country that was not yet really acquainted, let's say, to the form of modern and contemporary art. So they gathered together, and here you might wonder why I chose this image called The Beggar, which was a painting from Ahmed Al-Ansari. I chose it because at the time, the artists were saying they would go around carrying this painting, and they would go to door to see like organization, public organization, asking for money and asking also for, let's say, some form of recognition. So some people will give them like chairs, tables, so they could like start practicing. While the ruler, in the end, the ruler of Sharjah, decided to buy the painting, let them create the organization in 81, and then also gave them a monthly, like a monthly payment to carry out their activities. So this was like the real beginning of the Emirati-French Society. So here you have the first exhibition of the Emirati-French Society, which was also carried in 81, where you can see that the artists have like, they all show like their paintings and like artworks, but to follow up with our mission of, let's say, enhancing the art education in the UAE, they also decided to launch a magazine that still exists today called Tashkil, where they would, the artists would write manifestos. They would also translate from English, to Arabic some very important text, either some modern art text or some text from the European avant-garde. So this is, I think, the first publication. This is the first publication of Tashkil, and you can still find it today, kind of evolved, but has always the same mission, let's say. So the first generation of artists. I will start with one of the main movements, and after I will present the second one. The first one is modern art revisited. So before going a bit further, I will just briefly present what happened in the Arab world in terms of art in the 20th century. So in the 60s and 70s, we had the emergence of data, which was the beginning of the modern Arab art. So here you can already notice that we have a total different historical timeline, let's say, if you compare it to the European modern art. In 1971, the One Dimension Group, which was an Iraqi group, launched a manifesto where they decided to, let's say, promote some kind of alliance between innovation, but also with innovation and, let's say, tradition. So what they did pretty much was trying to, I won't say to clean, but forgot a little bit the European influence in the art, and try to get back to something that will be closer to Arab art. So they will start, for example, using calligraphy, or they would like integrate some Islamic art elements within their practice. So here comes the Urufiyya movement, also called Letrism, which was the first pan-Arab artistic movement, which is important because the artists would come from every country, from Morocco to Syria to Egypt. It was really something that was going through the full, let's say, region. So the Urufiyya or Letrism is pretty much trying to use the letters, Arabic letters, incorporate them into the artwork and try to work from there. So all the artists that were studying in Egypt, in Lebanon, Emirati artists, they came back to their country and they were strongly influenced by this kind of movement. So here we have the image of Abdulkader al-Rais. So this is a contemporary picture from nowadays. But what is interesting about Abdulkader al-Rais is that he started his education in Kuwait, where his family moved for financial reasons. And he started to paint at this time. So pretty much what he would do, it was paint everything that you will see around him. So here you can see starting with portraits. So it's quite traditional in some kind of way. But quite quickly, he came back to the UAE, so beginning of the 80s, and he decided to stop painting. He totally stopped as he integrated the government. So he stopped, but in 1992, he went to the US, and when he was confronted to vivid colors, to new surroundings, that kind of gave him the sense of going back to painting. So he came back to the UAE, and he started to, let's say, try to reflect all the rapid modernization that was going through. For this one, as you can see, called a sad afternoon, it kind of reflects these two elements between changes happening in the back and in front some kind of more traditional scenery. Also, his artwork also have a sense of nostalgia. Like you can see, he's looking at all those changing, and he's kind of not regretting them, but a little bit. In this first painting, you can see some kind of square shapes that start to appear in his painting, and that got later to become the main significant shape in his artwork, and he will always from now on, use it. So you can see on this one who is using it. Later on, Abdulkader al-Rais went with the art series called Urufiyya. So if you remember, that was one of the first movements I was presenting you in the Arab world, let's say modern Arab world. So what he does is pretty much the same, using calligraphy and letters, and incorporate them into some abstract painting. There is also some kind of political sense in his painting. For example, the chef is also some kind of comment on what was happening in Syria at this time. So So, now that I presented briefly, I won't be able to present all the artists on this time, so kind of like try to go a little bit more quickly. But the next one is Dr. Najat Maki, which is kind of an exception because she was the first woman to have a scholarship to go study abroad. And she was a painter, so she went to study art in Cairo. And she got in 2001 a PhD in philosophy of art. So what we can see in Najat Maki painting is like she uses a very long and feminine figure, usually covered in abaya, so which kind of reflect our local environment. And much later on, because this is, I think, a piece from last year. Let's see this. This is a piece from last year. She started like going back to some more like Islamic element or Islamic art. From this third generation, we also have the Dr. Mohammed Yusuf, which was again trying to do a synthesis, but this time mostly between Buddhism and Islam. He was using sculpture, which was also like one of the first sculpture artists let's say in the UAE, sorry. And there was also Abdulrahim al-Salem. So I kind of go quickly, but we can talk later about them. So this was the first current, let's say, of this first generation of artists. And as you can see, there is some common feature within their work. Most of them, they reflect on the local and cultural, let's say, environment, while being strongly influenced by the modern Arab art. Yet, in the CEFAS, there was a second movement that was to be developed, which is the conceptual art movement that was this time led by Hassan Sharif. So Hassan Sharif, that you can see here, started his early career by doing some political cartoons. So he has one of them here. And he was publishing in the first newspaper of the country. So he was always like trying to reflect what was happening around him, most of the time with a quite ironic tone. But he decided to go to London, and when he went to London, it was like a major shock for him, and he decided to like drop everything and study art and start to do experimentation. So experimentation, well, he was first strongly influenced by the Fluxus movement, which is a European avant-garde movement, which decided him to go back to the UAE and start doing performances. So here, sorry, you can see one of his performances. What he would do pretty much was going to the desert and do very banal or very usual or very little action, such as jumping, such as jumping or tying a rope between two rocks, or also we would do standing, just standing. So we're just like trying to explore the anti-art possibilities that was also promoted by Fluxus art movement. At the same time, Hassan Sharif started to look around and see what was happening. What he noticed was when he went to the supermarket in the UAE, he started to see the massive income of articles produced in China that was kind of like invading the market. So what he does, he was collecting all of these artifacts, let's say, or objects, and we start making like huge installation of them. They were kind of like showing the start of consumerism within the UAE. The second option he would do was doing some very repetitive action, which could be like tying ropes, as you can see here, and he would like do it for hours and hours, which was for him a way to show the daily fatigue. Is it fatigue? Yes, yeah. Exhaustion, daily exhaustion. That could like emerge from daily activities, mostly work, and like this kind of productivity, that was expected from the worker at this time. So Hassan Sharif, who is the brother of Hassan Sharif, also started as one artist, so you can see one of his pieces here, but he's also known for being one of the first art critics of the UAE. So he will mainly publish in Tashkil magazine, and both of them did an exhibition called Positive Plus Negative Less, which was at the time like really badly received by the press and also by the people who came to the exhibition, because they were really experimental and the public was not really used to that at that time. So to try to, let's say, push a little bit forward, they started really engaging with the community, giving class, again translating tests, writing, everything they could do to try to, let's say, make an acceptance within the society. Later on, under the mentorate of Hassan Sharif, there was a group called the Group of Five, which was unlike, it was a very informal group. Themselves did not call them this way, but the press later on called them this way. And it was mostly made of visual artists, but also some movie makers, such as Yujuna Ranem, who is a female movie maker, and also some like foreign artists who were also living in the Gulf, in the UAE at this time. So what ties them together is the idea of doing experimentation and hybridization to show what they were witnessing around in the country. Because the country at that time was already starting to review some workers coming from everywhere, some movement, some migration, and they wanted to, let's say, to reflect this kind of spirit within their work and to break the boundaries one more time. Amongst the Hassan Sharif students was Mohammed Kazem. So Mohammed Kazem started to go to the Emirati-French Society when he was only 15. First, he was starting as a painter and as a musician. He always had a really strong link to music. And little by little, he started dropping all of the painting things and wanted to do experimentation because there was the spirit of the group. So he started this series called Scratches on Paper. So Scratches on Paper, where pretty much you just like take paper and take some sharp object and try to make some action, whatever the action, and record it at the same time. But he also started to do performances, so following the footsteps that of his mentor Hassan Sharif. So here you can see one of his performances called Song, where you can see him pretty much sticking his tongue into a multitude of objects. So like sharp scissors, there was also like a door knob, a lot of objects. And the main idea behind this performance was to try to experiment the world around him in a new way, but also to try to give a new image of the body, which is usually linked to temptation and sexuality, and he just wanted to like show that there was also philosophical approach possible with this kind of performances. But he also, let's say, moved to something a bit different, where he wanted to reflect on the evolving surrounding of Dubai. So in this series, for example, Photograph with a Flag, he just went to a flag that one day just appeared nearby his atelier that he used to share with Hassan Sharif, and he didn't know what was the meaning of the flag. So maybe was it like a new property delimitation, maybe there was a new building that was coming up, he didn't know. So he just decided to take picture, like as a way of collecting some kind of memories. But little by little, all those flags started to appear everywhere in Dubai because they were actually the flags that were marking some kind of new project coming up. So it kind of like, with this body, what started as just something you really didn't know about it, started as a new project that would like develop later on. Sorry. And among the group of five, once again I have to kind of go fast a little bit, but there was also Mohammed Ahmed Ibrahim, so who also had a work that kind of tackles the idea of systemic approaches and reflecting the environment. We can talk about them maybe during the conversation time. Another artist from the group of five. And this one, I will just present a little bit more of work because it's, I think she's a very interesting artist. So Tissam Abdulaziz, that you can see here, is a woman that graduated in mathematics at Alia University in 1999. And she kind of used mathematics and systemic structure to talk about change of identity and cultural changes in the UAE. So she started doing as well some performances, such as this one, autobiography, where pretty much she was wearing a black leotard instead of the black abaya, and she decided to work in Sharjah. So Sharjah is a little bit like more conservative if you compare to Dubai or Abu Dhabi. But as you can see on her body, she's wearing like some green numbers. For her, the green numbers are like the symbol of the money. And the money is like the new universal value, let's say. So the number you can see here on her, well, you cannot really see it, but you would have to imagine. The numbers that are printed on her leotard are actually all the bank, how you call that? Like when you go to an ATM and you get the money. So this one. And so she did this performance and she just like wandered around in the street of Sharjah wearing this leotard. And what she wanted to do was pretty much provoke a reaction and make people think, why was she doing this? So it's kind of a little bit provocative because the woman is not really supposed to go dressed this way in the street in Sharjah, but it's also a more general term, let's say, some kind of like reflection that she proposes on how the money has become the new first universal value, but also how a person is judged through our bank account and kind of like this sort of idea. So later on, she continued with the idea of exploring the woman, gender, and identity. So you can see in Woman of Cycle, she always wears this black leotard. She's like struggling to get herself of this white circle. And as she explains, the circle is a representation as life itself, both simple and very complex at the same time. And as she also like explained for her, it was the idea of she wanted to convey the idea and the way she was feeling as a woman, as an artist woman in the Gulf, and all the roles that were like given to her. On the second picture, Unashamed, she's just wearing the same black leotard, and she keeps writing on her body, unashamed, 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 because as she said, she has been facing a lot of, let's say, criticizes for being a woman and working with her body. So she wants to say like, no, I'm not ashamed, and I will say it a lot. So to quickly conclude, before giving the micro to Alia, I think that what we can see here is that from the beginning of the UAE, there was actually a very strong art scene that was developing through two very distinct movements. The first one, so with Abdulkader al-Rais, Najat Maki and such, who were really trying to integrate what they learned abroad, but also to change it and make it them with like using the elements of the local and cultural elements. But the second movement, led by Hassan Sharif, was very different in a sense that he really rejected this idea of always trying to show identity, of always trying to celebrate patrimoine. Because as I said, like in the Gulf, a lot of the artistic production is actually centered around this idea of identity and showing how fast everything is going. And he wanted to get somehow more universal, let's say. So what is important to note is that in the 80s and 90s, these artists really struggled to get accepted, both by the society. They were started to get really supported by the Emirates of Sharjah, thanks to the Sharjah Biennale, for example. But it took time. And now we're going to see how all these artists now finally gain a huge recognition and also are now celebrated for their artistic researches. Thank you.
First of all, before starting, I'd like to thank CEFAS for the invitation and for Océane, who had initiated this at the beginning. Just to be casual, I met Océane in Kola for the Kola project, which was in the Louvre Abu Dhabi, and she was working with the Institut Français, and I was working with the Louvre Abu Dhabi and still am. So this is how we have these discussions about the history of art in the UAE, and given our academic research that is ongoing. So I'm very happy that Océane did a great introduction. I didn't have any doubt about that. But I'll continue from there on, and to let you know, with the UAE, you have, obviously, a lot of you know that there are 7 emirates, but the main emirates that contribute to the art scene are Dubai, Sharjah, and Abu Dhabi. And each one of them contributes in a different way. So I would say they're very complementary. In Dubai, you have the main emphasis is the art market, and then you have in Sharjah the education and kind of like grassroots environment that allows the artists to produce, and obviously education and culture are the most important things in Sharjah, and Océane has already mentioned Sheikh Sultan Al-Qasimi, whose main aim is to nurture education and culture. And then you have Abu Dhabi with the opening of Louvre Abu Dhabi, and also Al Ain Museum, which was opened at the end of the 60s. So a lot of people say it's a new scene and museums are opening in the UAE now, but there has been an existence of important museums in the UAE, and most importantly with the aim of late Sheikh Zayed, that he wanted to focus on protecting the cultural heritage and continuing to promote culture in different ways. So, to give you a heads up, you will see a lot of different things in the coming slides, because this is how it is now in the UAE. So you have a lot of things happening in the art market, you have residency programs happening, you have some universities, and I'm not going to say a lot, some universities that contributed in the shaping of the identity of art in the UAE. And the most important one is the University of Sharjah, which was the only one in the Gulf back then in 2001. So, speaking first about the art market, Christie's Dubai opened in 2006. And as I have been kindly introduced, I'm also an artist. So I studied fine arts in the University of Sharjah. So you will see my perspective comes from being an artist and also from working in the art world. So, in 2006, I had just entered the College of Fine Arts and Design in Sharjah, and it was, for us as students, looking at artwork that is international was only in books and online. So, with the opening of Christie's and the opening of the art fair, Art Dubai, which was then called the Gulf Art Fair in its first edition, it was the first time for us in the UAE to see artworks such as Picasso and other artists who are very well known. So, Christie's opened in 2006, and it's not only about looking at artwork and making it available for people in the UAE, but also it has substantially changed everything about art in the UAE. So, Christie's Dubai introduced a lot of artists from the Middle East, and also made the people living in the region, it's not that they didn't know that art was valuable, obviously people come from different social backgrounds, but for the general public to understand what art means in terms of value and history, it was the jump start for that. So, Parviz Tanavoli sold his work in 2008 for 10 million dirhams. So, for people living in the UAE, it was a shock, but it was also a window to understand what was happening internationally. And it was very well received. In terms of such activity, people understood what was happening, because buying valuable things is not something new. So Christie's was smart to do also sales for fine jewelry and other things that were the interest of people living in the Gulf. But also, it was an introduction or an easy way to acquire art, because a lot of artists in the Gulf, as you may know, and you know very well, especially in Kuwait, are very important collectors. So it was easy for collectors to see artworks in Dubai, and for artists who are very important in the 20th century to be able to sell their works, such as obviously Mahmoud Saeed. It's not for thanks to Christie's Dubai, but also for us in the UAE and in the Gulf to understand that we should invest in art of the Middle East. So, with Christie's Dubai, we have, let me just check, yes. So, the art market existed in the UAE before Christie's. I'm not saying it was the very beginning of the existence of the art market in the UAE, but there were very few galleries that existed, such as Green Art Gallery. This is the new Green Art Gallery, but it was in a villa in Dubai since 1993. Slowly developing, we have the Third Line Gallery, which was the first in the famous Al Sarkal Avenue now in Dubai. So this was in 2005. It's in a warehouse because this area called Al Ghoz in Dubai is an industrial area, and it was cheaper to rent gallery space in these industrial places. So the Third Line Gallery opened in Al Ghoz area, and then slowly there were a lot of galleries gathering under the Al Sarkal Avenue area. So we also have the DIFC area, which is the Dubai International Financial Center, and this is how it is today. Today, you can see a lot of galleries in this place, and it is the main hub for galleries in the UAE. In the UAE, yes, because as I mentioned earlier, the galleries are concentrated in Dubai. And then obviously Art Dubai and Abu Dhabi Art. So we have two major art fairs in the United Arab Emirates, and then previously known as the Gulf Art Fair in its first edition. Art Dubai was really a catalyst for this kind of movement. And you have galleries arriving from all over the world presented in this fair, which allowed, it was sort of, I remember very well, the first edition was like a museum. People didn't come to buy. People came to buy, yes, but a lot of people came to see art. And I remember that it was the first time for me to see international artists such as Picasso. I was a student, I was like, oh my God, Picasso in Dubai. We were not naive, but it was true that it didn't exist. And the only way we could see it is through reproductions, which was completely, false. And you have to see how it is in real life. So I will speak about art colleges and universities later, but since we have the slide on, it was also an introduction for myself and a lot of artists who are practicing today to enter the art world through interning in the Art Dubai Fair. Students from art colleges went and assisted these galleries and understood what the art market was about. I worked with Sundaram Tagore from New York in 2008, and for me it was, working in the gallery, even my job was very simple, but to listen to what collectors were saying, to understand how work was stored, to look very closely to other works coming from all over the world, it was really something educational. And it could be surprising for other people coming from all over the world, because an art market is an art market. I mean, an art fair is an art fair. But given that there was a scarcity in looking at international art, this was very important in shaping what was yet to come. So, the significant exhibitions at that time were, so we have Andreas Gursky, who at that time sold the most expensive painting and had a solo exhibition in 2007. And to have a solo exhibition of an important German artist was a window to the Western world. It was a really big exhibition in the Sharjah Art Museum, and it was distributed in a few floors. And Sheikh Sultan, as you can see, is a big supporter of art in the UAE, and mainly in Sharjah. And we have another exhibition that happened also, Word into Art, coming from the British Museum. And we have works by Suzanne Hefuna, for example, and an introduction to what calligraphy was in the Middle East. And then we have Pablo Picasso exhibition in the Emirates Palace in Abu Dhabi, which was curated by Anne Baldassari, who is the director of Picasso Museum. So a big retrospective of like Western artists, but also having art from the Middle East presented by important institutions was really something that we were not used to seeing. So in 2009, it was the first time that the UAE has presented in the Venice Biennale. And as we all know, it is very important, and maybe the first important art, international art event in the world. And of course, with the World Art Fair and all other events, but for the UAE to be presented in such a platform, it was sort of like a legitimization of the UAE in that sense. So I put this image to show that also, this is Hamdan al-Shamsi, who's an artist, young artist, not anymore emerging, but as established at this point, who was interning in the Venice Biennial. So you can see that the government has invested a lot in nurturing the artists from the UAE, especially the younger ones. So we had the Emirates Fine Arts Society, as mentioned by Océane, and then it continued to, appear in different places. We do have universities, but it is important for younger artists to be, present in these international events, for them to understand what the real art world is about. So we have works by Lamia Gargash, and I myself I interned in the Venice Biennial in 2009, and I was a third-year student in university. And for me to see someone like Lamia Gargash, who was also a young artist, presented in such an important exhibition, it was really exciting and new for us. And what she presented here is one-star hotels in Dubai. And this exhibition was very interesting because it shed light on all aspects of the UAE. So the things that you don't know about Dubai, because it was always known as, you know, the glitzy glam, but we also do have like one-star hotels, and it's a normal city at the end of the day. But also showing models of future projects, which was like the Saadiyat Island project and other projects. So it was a strong beginning and quite a strange exhibition, but very interesting, curated by the Zolgadar, if I'm pronouncing it right. And it's called It's Not You, It's Me. Quite a strong title too. Emirati Expressions was, and still is, a very important exhibition that happens every 2 years. The first edition of it was in 2009, curated by Anwar Dasari, and it was quite encyclopedic because we have 150 artists from the UAE. And for a foreign curator to arrive, it's, in my opinion, it's interesting because, you know, you come and introduce yourself and then get to know all these artists, and from a different perspective, gather all these artists and put them in a show, and then, you know, see what could happen. It was a very important show because you have the established artists, the designers that wanted to be artists, and then also the artists that were establishing. And I think this was a very important point where Emirati artists felt like they have this important platform that is being renewed after the group of 5 and then the Emirates Fine Arts Society. So we have different editions of Emirati Expressions in 2011, yes, 11 and 13 and yeah, 15. So we have Mohammed al-Mazrouri, Ammar al-Attar, Zainab al-Hashimi, and this was, I think, the 3rd edition of Emirati Expressions. Océane had already mentioned Mohammed Ahmed Ibrahim, Sam Abdel Aziz, Mohammed Kadhim, and the rest of the artists. And then in 2010, Noor al-Suwaidi, who curated this exhibition and who herself is an artist who studied in the UK, came and curated the exhibition called The Present in Maraya Art Center, which is the first gallery that opens in Sharjah, because Sharjah is known for its museums. They have a lot of museums in Sharjah: Islamic Art Museum, Sharjah Art Museum, and you can look them up, but there are many. So to have a gallery like that for contemporary artists, it was new, and these are my paintings in the back. So for me, it was really exciting to meet a curator who was a bit older than me, who understood what I was doing, and because there was a gap between the generations, and then there was sort of a renewal for the taste in art, because artists who were born in the 80s are very globalized. We live in a country where I myself I remember at some point I was in a classroom with 20 nationalities in school. So we're only like 35 students with 20 nationalities. It's quite, you know, it's a melting pot, and then your taste changes, your ideas change, and then I would say the resources also change with the internet and all of the things coming. So having Noor al-Suwaidi, who was young and who understood what we were doing, she got artists, and to be fair, Noor really brought up a lot of the artists that are famous today, like Ala Idris and Farah al-Qasimi. So, speaking of art colleges and universities, Océane mentioned that we had scholarships to Baghdad, Dimashq, a lot of, and then the US and the UK and Cairo. So now we have universities in the UAE, and the first one was opened in 2001, which is we had a program of fine arts in the University of Emirates that had shut down, but also started the new program in 2001 with the University of Sharjah. So the College of Fine Arts and Design has produced important artists such as Ala Idris, and this is how the university looks like. We had a lot of studios they had equipment that were really good, and Hur al-Qasimi, the daughter of Sheikh Sultan al-Qasimi, had studied in the Royal Academy and brought with her the knowledge and the know-how of creating these sort of workshops and studio spaces. So the equipment, as you see here in the printmaking studio, which is till now the best printmaking studio in the UAE, was all brought from the UK and then developed with artists like Najat Makki, who came and taught there, and then a lot of artists coming from abroad, so from Singapore, from Bosnia, from Australia, and all over the world. So Ala Idris's work, state number 1, is her reflection of Reem Island in Abu Dhabi. So Ala is from Sharjah, and she moved to Abu Dhabi, and when she was Googling Reem Island, it was all of the new developments coming, and so it was sort of virtual. And arriving to Reem Island, which is Abu Dhabi is mainly a group of islands, so it was very different from what she saw on Google, but it's normal with the developing cities to see virtual ambitions and how the cities would look like. And me, myself, living there for 8 years, I could see that it is happening now after 8 years. But because the country looks forward to developing all these places, Ala was sort of doing a futuristic take to Reem Island, and she took pictures of like places where now you have water here and a lot of canals and stuff. So it's sort of like sci-fi take on this place. So Ala is one of them. Sheikh Al-Mazrou, who's student in Sharjah, graduated in 2010, now represented by Lori Shabibi, who is in Asirkal Avenue. Did her master's in Chelsea University and got the Dean's Award for her project Tension in 2014, and is now teaching in the University of Sharjah. So studying there, coming back there, there's a sense of responsibility from these younger artists because there's a sense of appreciation. So to understand that there is something that we were yearning for and wanting to provide for the younger generation, you can see it in artists such as Sheikha. And then the College of Art and Creative Enterprises in Zayed University, Zainab al-Hashimi, who was one of the artists that was part of Collab, Contemporary Art and Savoir-Faire, that I worked with Océane on. This was a collaboration with Saint-Just, where Zainab worked with glass to create this installation that speaks of maps that are continuously changing in the UAE. And these colors are taken from the topography of Saadiyat Island and trapped within this concrete reinforced mesh to speak of nature versus man-made construction. And I would say it was such a beautiful experience working with her. This was in Emirati Expressions that I mentioned earlier, where she created sort of a sand dune made out of camel hair. I don't know. Hair, fur. Anyway, so Zainab is a graduate of Zayed University. We also have Methad Methan, Afra Dhahri, who's now also teaching there. And then we also have something interesting where the disciplines are kind of intertwining. So you have students who graduated from architecture, from product design, graphic design, who graduated and created art, because nowadays, and not only in the UAE, these disciplines are sort of merging. And for architects and all over the world, it's not very easy to graduate as an architecture student and build a building, but they do have an understanding of matter and physicality of things. So Tareen Hasbar, who had collaborated with CEFAS also in Collab, worked on this project, which is made out of sand and ceramics, and she's an architecture student herself. Hadiya Badri, also from AUS, graphic design student, continued to produce. So I mention this because I would like to shed light on the importance of these universities and these disciplines in terms of like supporting these artists to create and to be present in the art scene. So, mentioned earlier also internships for art students was sort of a place for us to, and for art students today, to continue to be exposed to the real world, because as a student here and in the UAE and everywhere, it's like a bubble university, you know, you need to be taken outside, and the government has understood very well that these students have to be supported to go and understand how the real world is. So I say the government because it was all funded by like, universities and institutions like as such. So the most important internships are the Sharjah Biennial, where students from University of Sharjah went and worked with artists who had produced artworks for the Biennial in Sharjah, and also in Art Dubai and the Venice Biennial. Artist initiatives, we have one of the most famous and earliest, the Flying House, which is a villa in Jumeirah that was studio for the famous Hassan Sharif, and also like sort of like an archive center for their work, and they store their work, they meet people, and it's open by appointment. So we, you know, university students were taken to Hassan Sharif and other artists who had lived there and worked there to be introduced to what was happening back then. So these are visitors who had come to see. So you can see the work is on the walls and the garden and the doors, and then you have the studio and also the corridors where the works are stored. And now all of this series is acquired by an important institution in the UAE. So, Tashkil, which is founded by Sheikh Al-Latif Al-Maktoum, was a clinic in Dubai, and then transformed to an art college for a period of time, and then to Tashkil, as we know it today, which has a gallery space, but also workshops for artists who could get memberships and work there, and all the equipment that were bought for the art college were given to these artists. And it is the first, not the first, but the first, let's say, complete studio with a lot of like technological, like 3D printing, a lot of like fabric dyeing, and so many different disciplines were existing in Tashkil. And students such as Method Methan, Rand, forgot her, anyway, Rand, Zainab, a lot of people graduated, and Assi, the very important artist who exhibited there. So Tashkil is continuously, more than 10 years now, continuously presented artists, given residencies, and also providing workshops for artists from the UAE and also abroad. And one of the most recent is Beit 15, which was founded in 2017 by 3 artists, Afra Dhahri, Hashim Lemki, and Metha Abdallah. So this is an image of a studio. So the Beit 15 is a villa in Abu Dhabi, and it's the first of its kind to have, like, it's an artist initiative, but also artist studio. So it's like completely autonomous, and a very like casual and nice place to look at art and also visit artists in their studios. They have a lot of events, and it is becoming a place where artists are meeting, and musicians are playing, DJing. So it's a very fun place, and if you visit, you do have to see it. So last and not least, we have residencies and fellowship programs. So Sheikh Salama Art Foundation is one of the most important today that funds younger artists, and since its inception in 2013, there are maybe more than 50, if I'm not mistaken, artists that had graduated from this fellowship program. It's in collaboration with Rhode Island Design School, and this is an exhibition, the final exhibition, but also they do have workshops, and it's a year-long program. Zayed is one of the students, and you also have a critique session, which is very important for emerging artists to have. So it's an exposure for these artists and also a way for them to practice being known artists. And a lot of them, after this residency, have continued. So the residency also provides scholarship to study in Rhode Island, but also other universities. And a lot of the students have already graduated, and a lot of them are also now in the States and other countries doing their MFA. We also have Air Dubai, Artist in Residence, that is part of Art Dubai, and Sharjah Art Foundation Artist Residency Program. This is how Sharjah Art Foundation looks like. So there are older buildings, but then there are new extensions for them. It's a beautiful space. The Sharjah Biennial now takes place there, and so SAF provides residency spaces for artists such as Ammar Al-Addar, and this is his studio where he collects archival photos of the region. And we also have Abdurrahman Maini, Mariam Al-Qasimi, and other artists who are working there. Astarkal Avenue also has a residency program for artists from the GCC, and Tashkil also has a residency program. So just to, I went quickly over everything, but I wanted to shed light on the development that has happened over the last decade. So as Océane mentioned, it was a very small group of artists, and they had mentored the second generation. And then the third generation arrived from looking at these works, and in the 90s, the Sharjah Biennial was mainly, I would say, the most important art event that happened in the UAE. That is still very important, and I would say one of the most important in the Middle East. So going through all of these different branching of institutions, programs, and also artists that are coming up every year, I would also want to let you have a chance to ask questions and let it be more of a conversation. So thank you all for listening, and I'm happy to take any questions with us.